I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for each cause for a moment of silence. Let's have some happy thoughts about Ray Taylor's 98th birthday. Thank you. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. Due to the COVID-19 situation, the Borough of Fairhaven's municipal facilities are closed to the public. This meeting is being presented through the Zoom meeting platform and being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation in this council meeting of June 23rd, 2020 is available by call-in phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until public question comment time, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question, comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting is included in the scheduled meeting, which was amended by resolution number 2020-99 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, 2 River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 9, 2020, posted on the borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. Allison, roll call, please.
Council members Banahan,
Here.
Krishner Keefe,
Here.
Koch,
Here.
McHugh,
Here.
Rodriguez, Sorensen,
Here.
and Colleen Lapps in attendance as well as Attorney Alfieri.
Thank you. Okay, first up, Police Commissioner, a proclamation for the Fairhaven Police Department. Councilman Mike McHugh.
You're mute, Mike.
Mute. Take your time, Mike.
There we go. Proclamation recognizing and commending Chief Joseph McGovern and the Fairhaven Police Department. Whereas we live in a world that uses the term hero far too loosely, it is overused for movie stars, politicians, and professional athletes. These individuals may have unique abilities and on occasion engage in heroic efforts. However, they are not true heroes. And whereas if you want to see some heroes, look around you. True heroes patrol the streets of the Borough of Fairhaven, playing an essential role in safeguarding the safety, rights, and freedoms of the citizens of the Borough of Fairhaven. And whereas police officers rarely are ever thanked or told they did a great job. And whereas the Fairhaven Police Department diligently works to stay ahead of the curve by continuous training, being transparent and accountable in their duties, as well as leading the way by being the first department in the surrounding area to purchase dash cameras for the cars in 2002 and purchasing body cameras for officers in 2020. And whereas this speaks volumes for how fortunate we are to have these individuals wear the badge and protect our residents and those who visit. And whereas this proclamation is a salute to the finest officers and constituents, the best we have to offer for their community policing, demonstrated professionalism under the most trying of circumstances, patience when others long would have walked away, demonstrated humility and empathy, dedication to duty when the clock ticks long past the end of their shift. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the mayor and council of the Borough of Fairhaven recognize and thank Chief McGovern and the police officers of our community, whose devotion to duty brings peace of mind to all who they serve, making them the best in the police profession.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something real quick?
Yes, Chief.
I'd just like to thank Councilman McHugh and all the council members and the mayor, yourself for that. Thank you. I appreciate it. we appreciate it. I'll make sure the guys get a copy of that. Thank you.
You're quite welcome, Chief. Okay, first up, workshop session, non-domestic animal waiver request for chickens at 237 Dartmouth Avenue. We have an extensive package here.
Mayor, I'm going to promote Ms. Scott as a panelist in case there's any questions.
Okay.
Are there any neighbors that are on? I'd love to hear from them.
I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Ms. Scott, we thank you for your application. You have your chicken, are the chickens there now, or are they staying at a farm for the moment?
Excuse me, Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
May I ask a question? Is there a limit? I noticed that there were at least 4 chickens here that were presented. Is there a limit to the number of chickens that can be in this backyard?
No, I checked with Nick. We've had a resident on Hants Road a few years ago. She had 4 chickens that stayed here through the warmer months and then went upstate New York for the winter. So we've never had a max of 4 before. And she advised all her surrounding neighbors. She got a 200-foot property list and advised everybody that she would be applying for this. I haven't heard any objection to it.
Okay.
I have a question. Ms. Scott, it appears that you're on mute, so you'll have to unmute yourself to answer. Have you heard from any of your neighbors expressing concerns to you directly about the application?
No, nobody complained about having chickens in our backyard now.
Okay. Have you had chickens in the past?
I had as a child.
Okay. Do they make noise? I don't know the answer.
I am not getting roosters. These are all hens.
Hens don't make noise. I don't mean to sound silly. I just have no idea.
They shouldn't be making more noise than a regular dog in the neighborhood.
And the hens, I'm assuming lay eggs, and will you be using those for your personal use, or do you intend to sell them?
Just for my personal use.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Scott?
I have more of an administrative question to piggyback on what Councilwoman Koch asked. If there were to be if we were to approve this application, if additional chickens were added to the coop, would an additional application be required?
You can place a limit. You can place a limit on this, and then if it expands, they'd have to come back.
And her permit would say for 4 chickens.
I would be more comfortable with that.
Right, the permit that I issue would say no more than 4 chickens.
Would Ms. Scott be okay with that?
Yep, I think 4 chickens is plenty for us.
Ms. Scott, I've got a couple of questions. I read your letters that you wrote to the residents, and basically, it's an affirmative statement that you're gonna have chickens. It's not that you were seeking permission from the town for a waiver for the farm animal ordinance. But to that extent, how large is your property, 237 Dartmouth Avenue?
I think we are a little less than a third of an acre. We are on a corner, and that's what I think it is. Yeah.
So you're about a third of an acre. In the area where the chickens are going to be, are they strictly within the coop, or is your backyard fenced in?
I have the backyard it's already fenced in. We requested that when my kids were little, so we have that already done.
Okay.
But are you going to build a chicken coop?
Yes, I'm planning on building a chicken coop. Yes.
It's going to be removed. It's going to be It's not going to be in one, she can move it, a removable coop. She can move it around in her property.
Okay, following all the standard setbacks for an accessory building?
Nick said it's fine. As if it was a stationary coop, then she'd have to apply and go through that. But since it's going to be a portable, then
How big
there's
is it?
nothing that regulates
Small?
that.
I'm sorry?
What is the size of the coop? Is it in here?
No, I did not build it yet. I was waiting for this meeting
Okay.
to know what the requirements are.
So are there any requirements as to size for this? You know, is it 6 by 9, 10 by 12, 50 by 100? I mean, do we need to put some limits on the size?
According
You
to
can
Nick, if
do
it's
that.
removable, there's no, but yes.
You can limit it the size of a square footage if you want, or some other form of limitation.
I know that,
suspect-
sorry. I know that based on all my research that I did, each chicken should have about 2 to 3 square feet of space.
That sounds like it's the size of a doghouse then. Like
Per
a
chicken,
3x4 would be 12 square feet.
Right.
Okay.
So I would be amenable if we limited the size to say 12 square feet.
Well, that's per chicken, right?
No,
No,
two.
No.
that's
Oh,
for all of
3
them.
square feet per chicken.
Oh, okay, yeah, so that's fine. Maximum of 12 square feet for the coop.
Okay.
I agree with Councilman Koch.
All right. The last time we had an application for chickens was actually quite contentious. And there were claims made about attracting rodents. I also know we do have foxes in the area. So if it does become a nuisance with the attraction of rodents and or rats. Good timing. Scott, would you be amenable to removing the chickens if any such problems do occur?
Yep, I understand.
Okay. All righty. Does anybody like to make a motion to see no, and I can't see if there's any other participants. Allison, are there any other participants?
There's attendees, but nobody has their hands raised.
Okay, so I'll put this, any attendees who'd like to chime in who are neighbors or noticed by Mrs. Scott? Seeing none, would anybody like to make a motion to allow the 4 chickens?
So moved.
Right?
Second.
Sleepy Tweet.
I'll make a motion.
Ian Cameron. To the extent with the provisions that a chicken coop not to be larger than 12 square feet is to be constructed, moved around the property, and that upon any nuisance occurring or significant nuisance occurring in regards to rodents and or disruption to the neighbors, that the chickens will be removed.
So moved.
Second.
I can't repeat everything he said, but what he said.
I got it.
All right. Is this a roll call or also any other discussion? Seeing none?
You could do all in favor.
All in favor?
Favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're good.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'll be in
Okay.
touch.
Chickens.
It's
Thank you
eggs
very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next up, we have 2020 municipal budget amendment resolution number 2020-112. Approve the 2020 budget amendment. Does anybody have any discussions or comments? So let's do a motion to offer.
Motion to offer?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Anybody have, we have Colleen Lapp, our CFO here. Councilman.
Should we,
I was just going to ask either Colleen or the finance committee to explain the amendment that was made, because what we discussed at the prior council meeting is a little bit adjusted.
I'll take
yeah, I was
that.
gonna ask the same thing because of the, and give the reasoning why we changed it.
I sent a related email off of that last meeting to the Finance Committee, which I forwarded to the full governing body. As you know, Colleen was not available at our last meeting, and Colleen's more of an expert on the nuances of budget amendments than I am. And although the $100,000 amount was met based on what it would take to take it all out of the capital improvement line, it would have exceeded 10% of one line and would have made the process much more time consuming. Considering the late date of this budget adoption, the CFO recommended that we take 90 out of the capital improvement fund and $10,000 out of surplus, thereby making the same $100,000 amount, but allowing the governing body to go ahead and pass the amendment and approve the budget at tonight's meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Allison, roll call, please.
Councilmembers Banahan,
Yes.
Kristen Keefe,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Sorensen.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Next, we have borough facilities and capital expenditures. Coming on the tails of the budget. And given what happened with the 623 and re-examining the entire facilities concept or plan that we had through the lens of COVID and the impact it's had to our economy, I am going to ask the council to put up on our next council meeting a vote on the purchase of 623 be voted down. I'd like your concurrence on that. This will put an end to the ordinance which allows the borough to purchase 623. Taking that off the table. All right, that's basically, we have a motion, second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, everybody in favor with that?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, looking at what we have left, we still have to build a new DPW building and we still have to build a new police station. Let's start with the DPW building. My thought on this is we have a building designed in concept and it is seated at the northern edge of the property fronting onto 3rd Street. I've had numerous discussions with individuals and I'm looking for basically a concurrence that we commission our architect to examine the feasibility of relocating, in essence, the same building from the northern edge of the facility to the southern edge of the facility, where the front of the building would be in the proximity of the southern fence line in the wooded area. All right, and before, this is to do a feasibility study to see if it works, if it fits, and if it's proper for the neighborhood. Going ahead and authorizing construction documents for the construction of the facility.
So Ben, are you referencing building it where the recycling area is or further into the woods? Just so I can have a visual.
Further into the woods. So it would not be encumbering upon that or a portion thereof, because the site does get shrunk. But the concept is to move the northern property line back, shrinking it along the northern property line. That would allow us 3 lots that are consistent with the neighborhood and front on 3rd Street.
So it's what Betsy and Jim have been talking about. Okay.
What they've been discussing, yes. Because originally when we thought this out, and the concept was we wanted to preserve 2 things. One, we have to keep the DPW safe. So we simply can't knock down the existing building and reconstruct it, because that puts us out of business. What we were looking to do is preserve the 9 or so lots for sale. All right. Putting that off to the side, and with concerns about the massing of the structure on the northern property, the concept is let's take a look at it, how it sits on the southern property, setting aside looking at 9 lots. Whatever impact it has, it has. And the idea is to have sufficient berming and landscaping so as not to upset the local neighbors. So I have the concurrence of the council to commission the architect.
But it still does leave some room if we wanted to sell. Sorry, Meg, I'll be quick. It still does leave some room in the forest area that if we did choose to offset some of the cost by selling some of that property, there is still some lots back there, correct?
At some point in the future, we just don't know what
Right.
That's
Okay,
that'll be one of the issues or the outcomes of the study.
Okay, just making sure I was following. Go ahead, Meg. Sorry, I didn't mention.
No problem. My question is, do we have an idea of the cost of this feasibility study and where would those funds come from?
We actually have a contract with the architect, which I can forward you a copy of, but ultimately they come out of what we call soft costs that are tied to that approving ordinance where we designated, I don't have it in front of me, Meg, but we did designate money that would go into such things as architectural and engineering and the things that aren't covered by, that aren't actually the building itself. So there is money in soft costs in the approving ordinances to cover those fees. If you want me to get I didn't get an estimate from them because this is the first time that I've really discussing this in any detail.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious if this is like a $10,000 lift or like $100,000 lift or any concept of what it costs.
Yeah, probably in the $5,000 range would be my guess.
And is this something that we've done, or the borough has done previously in exploring other locations on the property? Have we done this type of study for other locations for the building on the property?
We looked at different scenarios. We met with the architect and the site engineers and the borough engineers and the facilities committees at various times. We had some soil testing done in the area close to 3rd Street to see how it would support the foundation. But this back area was never contemplated for the location of the facility, to the best of my recollection.
I don't think so.
And I guess my next question would be, I know that various, considerations have been made for this, for DPW. Do you have an idea of how much we've spent so far in trying to solve for the DPW renovation or rebuild?
I can run a detail for those lines and send it to the governing body.
Okay. And I guess if I understand, Mayor, the concept behind looking at the southern edge of the property is to then free up space along 3rd Street for lots?
Possibly, yes, for free sale of the lots, but then also basically the idea that I think Councilman Banahan and Councilman Koch is to move the building away from that area and move it to basically hide it more. In the past, we didn't want to impose on the neighbors and we wanted to preserve the number of lots we could have.
Right.
But now we're re-examining it because the building that we need program-wise is in essence designed. This is before we pull the trigger and request construction documents. This is to take a look at the feasibility of putting it in a different location.
Understood. And
Mayor, can you just touch on the efficiency of the use of the property and also the continued use during a possible construction? Is that in your mind? Have you considered that?
That's.
I mean, as long as we're not impacting the flow of traffic in and around the current site, we should not be, or taking down an existing facility, we really shouldn't have any impact on the operations of the DPW.
Thank you.
I have one follow-up question, and Councilman McHugh, you might be able to answer this best. That side of DPW backs up to some residential properties. I believe there's one house on Maple, and then there's wooded area, and then two houses on Hendrickson. Is that right? Am I thinking of the correct lot?
Well, there's that buffer, that wood zone that I think
Correct.
no homes are directly. And keeping with that thought process, just to kind of throw this out there, wouldn't it make more sense to push it all the way straight to 3rd Street so that if there was a time where we did develop that area, only 2 homes would be directly next to the DPW instead of having 2 homes on the north end and then 2 homes on the south end?
No, because if you leave it where it is now, or if you move the building to the south end of the lot, there are no other homes impacted by its presence. If you push it to 3rd Street, you not only affect the homes that are currently affected, but you also affect the homes on the other side of 3rd Street and on the corner of Maple. So no, that's not correct, Mike.
Well, it would be still correct. You're just saying.
No, Mike, we've already seen the impact. We've already seen 2 upset sales based on the speculated or the projected location on 3rd Street. That's not correct. It's already been proven.
It would be sandwiched in between houses on both sides. So I don't know how that's not incorrect.
No, by moving it to the south side of the lot, it doesn't impact any other homes. The only area that would be now fronted to the back of the building would be the wooded area. If you move it to 3rd Street, you're now affecting the homes that are located along 3rd Street. It's not that complicated. Please think on it for a moment.
I'm not saying it's complicated, Jim.
Moving it to 3rd Street impacts other homes. Mike, why don't you inquire with the neighbors who would be impacted by locating it on 3rd Street so you can hear it firsthand.
So let's do this. So the questions that are being posed and the concerns that we have are the answers that we'll be seeking with the study. So what I'd like is the concurrence of the council to move ahead with that study. And then once the location has been determined, then we need to move ahead swiftly with the awarding and procurement of construction documents so we can prepare a bid and commence construction. And hopefully we can get that done sometime this year.
So Mike, sorry, Mayor, may I make a comment? Mike, I think we've got a good deal of plans for the move to 3rd. And if we look at repositioning it the way Councilwoman Koch and Councilman Banahan have suggested, we can then make a decision. Do we build on 3rd? Do we tear the building down and build it exactly where it is? Or do we use the southern end of the lot? And we'll have a full deck of cards to choose from, specifically around what the finances are behind it. Because if we build on the existing lot, there is a thought, and we have to prove it out, that we can reduce the amount of engineering and remediation costs involved.
I have one additional question with respect to the proposed feasibility study. What exactly is the information that the study produces?
We'll have a site plan.
And so it proposes a location for the respective buildings and uses of that DPW property.
Yeah.
And all the considerations, there are many considerations that go into that, and the architect will explain all of those details and what the differences are between putting it on 3rd, keeping where it is, and this additional location.
And do we have the programming to guide the architect in terms of what are the borough's needs for that property?
Yeah.
We've done that, Meg.
Okay, I don't know that I've seen it.
It was done 2 years ago, I think.
That might explain why I've not seen it. And has there, I know this is subsequent to anything we'd be looking at in the feasibility study or that might come from it. But I don't believe we yet have a full and complete understanding with the requirements for fair share housing if we were to sell off any of those lots, and that consideration would have to be made down the road. Is that accurate?
Well, you only create RDP once you hit 5 lots. Okay.
That's not my understanding from my conversations with Mike Edwards. That your
understanding was incorrect.
Okay, then I should share some correspondence I've had with him so that, you know, the borough's on the same page since he is our fair share counsel. I just want to make sure that, you know, our intentions are in moving forward with this study are, you know, that we understand that if this were to be the plan that we move forward with, that the implications for fair share have to be considered separately, I would think. And we need to know and understand how that would impact generating any realistic development potential under our fair share
I
obligation.
think that's only a problem if we sell anything.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
I think that you need to divorce the idea of moving the building, whether it's to Third or keeping it where it is or along the southern edge of the property, from the sale, because that's a different decision point. It doesn't necessarily or directly impact getting our employees into something that's healthy and useful and productive.
Sustainable and sustainable. Ben, I do have a question. Meg, are you done?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I just want to say I agree with Councilman Rodriguez. I think that that's an important point, that, you know, that's one outcome that could come from this, that we're able to sell that property, but we need to consider it separately.
Absolutely.
And we'll look forward to seeing the separate correspondence you had with the.
Sure, I'm glad to forward it.
Ben, just out of curiosity, I know that part of the engineering issues that we did encounter with having the building on Third would potentially moving it to the south end because of the soft ground. I don't know what, you know. And that's one of the reasons why apparently they didn't build it there to begin with, is, and the amount of engineering, would that potentially, by moving it to the other end, potentially, will the feasibility study, or do we have to wait for an engineering study to know what the financial impact may or may not be in regards to engineering from that regard? Because I know that there was a nice chunk of change that was going to go into us when we moving it to Third.
Yeah.
Engineering.
They'll have to do some sort of soil testing, whatever proposed location we settle on. They've already done it on the, you know, with the building fronting Third.
Is there a way, I mean, how much is before we get too far down the road of anywhere we put it, I mean, I know that ended up being quite a large amount due to the softness of the soil, to check out the soil at that end. I mean, while the feasibility study is going on, is there a way to duplicate those?
Don't quote me, but I believe they call it a pit test. They came in and drilled.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And you know, not my area of expertise, but I certainly can speak to Eli and copy the facilities committee and ask him if he would recommend doing the pit test first or the feasibility study first, or doing them at the same time. I can yield to the mayor here. He's a lot of expertise in building. Maybe he has an opinion that I'm not aware of. That,
I mean, if I'm jumping the gun here a little, Ben, just, you know, I just know that was an issue.
Didn't we have a?
Look, the idea in the beginning, okay, was to reduce the industrial use within the residential zone. So we could keep the facility, you know, operating while we configured our DPW. That's why we're not knocking down the current building and building it right where it is. That would have been the simplest answer, but that's not feasible. Maintaining the operations of the DPW while your mechanical garage is no longer existing. So we moved to 3rd Street with the idea, putting a premium, needing 9 lots, 7 lots, whatever it may be, numerous lots. Before we go ahead and with the construction going and move ahead with this project, I thought it'd be prudent to take a look at perhaps relocating the building to the southern edge of the current facility and then shrinking the facility in and around that. Perhaps leaving us 3 lots up on 3rd Street. Now, the suitability of those lots, or whether this council or another council decides at a future date that we're going to sell them, that will be decided at a future date. What we're focusing on now is, prior to going to construction documents, to replace a building that was built in 1972 as an interim stopgap measure that doesn't meet any OSHA or any building requirement and that is rotting in place. The need is urgent. Before we pull the trigger on construction drawings, take one quick look at what's the optimal location to meet the program needs. That's the idea.
Is it,
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask if it's possible to approve the study up to a certain expenditure. And I realize we haven't gotten a quote for it. I support the idea of the study. I just have no idea what it's going to cost.
Okay, let's go cost plus not to exceed $7,500.
Let's give the architect $20,000. This way it'll come in comfortably under that. He's not running the meter on us. He's done some work for us. So there's a lot of rework, a lot of work that he's already done that could, that he knows about the plot of land and be able to do it pretty efficiently.
I'd say 10. Mayor suggested that it would cost something in the ballpark of 5, and if some work's already been done and might be ready and easily accessible to the architect, perhaps 10 would be sufficient.
Now, you have to understand the level of feasibility we're looking at in the scope of work, because it's really not the number dollar that we give him, it's really the scope that he gets to. All right. So the idea is to create a site plan that we then can present to us in the public discussion. All right. This doesn't include engineering, soil borings, site suitability, many other things. All right. This is simply to give us a picture and see what impact it has to the other facilities and how we may rearrange that.
I'm pretty certain that the majority of the work will be done by the subcontractor, the site engineer that is part of the contract with the architect. Because we're not really dividing a building.
Chris is 20, but he's on the material. And do we have the concurrence? That way, Meg, if we add to the scope, we don't have to go back and redo it. All right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Did you put a dollar amount on it?
20,000.
Ben, we're having a little bit of an issue hearing you, or at least I am.
I am as well.
Yeah.
I apologize.
But but you did say the 20,000, and Meg, I think the work has to be done no matter what we do. So, and this architect was the most reasonable out of all the architects that we went with, and he has been very good with us in regards to rework. And that's why Councilman Rodriguez mentioned, let's give him $20,000 and let's, move along. I tend to agree with him. I think that's, if we're coming in at 20,000, then there's a lot of other issues going on. So I think and then that way, if there's other work we need to get done, we don't have to come back and keep doing it. So I think Chris, you've got that was a good point you made.
And I will work with the facilities committee to ask the architect first what he thinks about the pit test and what his thoughts are on whether that should be the first go round or after the feasibility study.
Thank you.
So Ben, I have a question. Once we conclude the feasibility study and determine where will the best location be, will we have an opportunity to revisit the design of the building? I know you and I had several conversations on Butler building versus custom construction. And you seem to feel that they're probably will equally cost the same. And in addition to that, once the feasibility study is concluded, will we have the opportunity to revisit some of the finishing touches on the building, which, to try and modify the costs in some way? Will we have those opportunities?
You're on mute, but you mouthed yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Given my microphone, I'm probably going to go to sign language if I could do that. All right. Good. Somebody just texted me we can't go over 17,500. I don't know, is that true or not?
We already have a contract with him, so that's not relevant.
All right. Let's move on to the next one. So, everybody in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
think it's prudent for us to do it.
With that hand. Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Megan Keefe?
I support the concept. I'm a little frustrated that we don't have an idea of the cost for the feasibility study. And that makes it more challenging for me. But since, it seems that we're putting a cap on it for this particular study, hopefully the architect is going to be efficiently within that, and that in the future we'll have some sort of idea of costs before, these types of things come forth.
Yeah, you get it
I
when
support it.
we do the police station and we do the DPW and we do any renovations necessary at the library or Borough Hall. You also have had the benefit of sort of going through this a bit, so that'll it's a bit of a learning curve. I appreciate that.
Well, it's taxpayer dollars, so it's important that, if it's $10 or $20,000 or $100,000, it's important that we understand what it is that we're agreeing to.
100% agree.
Teresa, if you would indulge me for a moment, did we not have a compaction test done for the site along 3rd Street?
We did, yes, sir. But I believe they're referencing if the area where they're planning to possibly move the building to the other end.
That I understand, but the compaction analysis for the piece along 3rd Street required that we excavate and replace soil. So the 3rd Street end was not the superior end. I think the whole site's going to turn out being the same way because it was cleared the same way. But is that not the case that the Proctor test for the strip along 3rd Street?
There's going to be, I don't want to call it remediation, but additional measures taken to recompact that soil before they put a foundation on it.
Okay, that's all I wanted to get to. Thank you, Teresa.
And remember that the price will be anything, how much information you want and what the scope of work is. So that's really the more important part of the equation. All right, very good. That handles DPW. The next up is the PD, and we still have a PD to build. And I think everybody's in agreement we need a new PD. But what we don't have is the land. So what I'm going to ask the concurrence of the council is to also commission our architect and his engineer to do a feasibility study to construct a police and community center facility on the 5th Street property.
I'd like to suggest we go around the horn and talk about this. I think it's good to try to get a foothold with the DPW. I just am interested in people's ideas about the police station and the community center, if that is the basic.
I can go first. I'm happy to go first.
Sorry, I was just asking the mayor if that was a reasonable thing.
Yeah. All right. So the concept simply is to build a police station on the existing parking lot, keeping them in business where they are right now, and then see how, where, and why we can fit sufficient parking and a community center. So, Councilman Koch, you want to go first? Let's start with you.
Yes. And I just would like to say that I had the opportunity to speak with 2 of our police officers on Saturday. And in the course of my conversation with them, the question came up about the police station and the community center. And they, and Meg, you can jump in too, you were there. They indicated that they were very happy with where the police station was, that they had a very good relationship with their neighbors. They talked about being very respectful in terms of leaving and entering the police department. They felt for the most part that they really were never actually there because they were on the road, they were doing their jobs, they were policing the community. They also felt it gave them the opportunity to meet with the kids if parents were in the parking lot or parents were using the community center or the fields over there. I felt that there was, and I asked them how their fellow officers felt about that too. And I felt that there was a strong will of the police officers to stay on Fisk Street.
Mayor, you're on mute. Mayor, you're on mute.
Got a dog barking. Let's go, Councilman Mike McHugh, please. Any thoughts?
Sure, I agree with Councilwoman Koch. You know, part of the proclamation was community policing, and it's a buzzword now, but we've been practicing it in Fairhaven for as long as I've been here. You know, I think there's something priceless to see the, you know, police officers every so often shooting hoops with the kids and interacting with the children. And I've spoken to the chief numerous times about this. And while River Road and on a county road certainly has its benefits, their offices are their squad cars, and they are out on the streets patrolling for the most part. And so, you know, they shouldn't really be in the police building that often unless they're booking people or doing paperwork. So the fact that it's on Fifth Street, I don't see too much downside, and I see a lot of positive to it. The borough facilities has obviously been going on way before Meg and I joined the council. You know, after looking at all the considerations and moving, I think there is a need to expedite this as quickly as we can, and keeping it at the Fisk location facilitates that. So I am for keeping it at Fifth Street and getting them a nice, safe, new building to operate from and keep us safe.
Thank you. Councilwoman Keith.
I would just like to indicate that I lived across from the police department for 6 years when we bought our first house in Fairhaven. And with small children even, we just never had any concerns or issues with the police department being next to our residents and allowing our children to be outside. We had zero concerns. And in fact, the officers were extraordinarily respectful of the residential neighborhood. The sirens and speeding and lights did not go on until they hit River Road. We never knew unless it was an absolute extraordinarily dire emergency. And then you knew they needed to get somewhere very quickly. So I can speak to the experience of living there, and that it was truly a pleasure to have them across the street. Patrolman Lagratira at the time identified that a branch was about to fall on my house and called me at work. Probably saved me quite a bit of trouble. I'd also like to add that I haven't, you know, I've been listening to this topic come up for a number of years now of what we need to do to either renovate or relocate the police department. And I haven't heard a demonstrated need for its relocation. And I think when you're looking at this problem of our police department, you have to look at first, the question is, do we need to move it from its current location? And if the answer is no, that part of the analysis stops there. And if the answer is yes, then the question is, well, why, you know, what were the reasons behind moving it, and what's the cost benefit analysis to relocating it? So, you know, for me, I haven't been informed of any demonstrated need. I've also, as Betsy mentioned, met with some of the officers. I've spoken to Chief McGovern. It doesn't sound like there's any true reason that our community needs to relocate this facility. I agree with Councilman McHugh that we do need to expedite. This has been an ongoing issue and concern for a number of years, and it's time. We have the bond that was put out last year. We have some of those funds available. While we may need more, we'll have to look at that. But at this point, I think it's time to move forward and start working on plans to rebuild a new PD at its current location on Fisk Street.
Councilman Banahan?
Mayor, can I ask Meg one question?
Certainly.
Does that include beginning site work immediately? You just said you wanted to start right now. Can you just elaborate on that?
We don't have any plans at all for from the architect for the building on that site, other than, you know, some preliminary discussions we had when we first brought him on board. But he hasn't produced any drawings or any site work or anything like that for that building.
And one more follow-up, sorry, Mayor, I just, did we clear all of the hurdles we needed to clear to build in that spot? I know there was a bunch of paperwork that needed to get done.
Well, we have the whole issue with the Rossi and the subdivision, which is still pending complete filing. And the location of the community center will be such that we will have to make some decisions on where it's located and what can be accommodated. That area has major issues with parking. You may have to look at some feasibility of either acquiring some property from the church and or looking at some sort of cross-access easement for parking with your neighbors there, which may make sense as part of the overall study. We really haven't delved in deep. We've had some preliminary conversations with different governing body members through the years and different facilities committee members. Don't forget this started back in 2015. So we have had minor conversations, but once the governing body had considered relocating to either the Sunoco site and or another area on the road, those conversations for that site didn't progress much farther.
So back to my, sorry, just going to loop back to that first question. So the paperwork piece of it's not complete yet?
Well, I don't really want to go into it too deeply as far as the paperwork piece of it goes, because it really is sitting with the attorneys right now. You know, Sal is working with Green Acres and with his counterparts to get that subdivision perfected, provided that's the direction in which the governing body wants to go.
What's the ETA on that, Sal?
It's basically ready. We just need to work with Mike Edwards on implications of perfecting it sooner rather than later.
Good question, Chris.
Sorry, Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate the apology. All right, Councilman Banahan?
It's not a textbook location. It seems to work for us. I have no argument.
Okay. And Councilwoman Swanson, Council President Swanson.
So this has been quite a roller coaster ride. We started out wanting to just renovate the police station where it was. Turns out that it was going to cost as much money to knock it down and build a new one. And even Mrs. O'Brien and Mrs. Blazer were in the audience and said, why in the world are you renovating? Makes no sense. That's foolish. So we then started looking at building a new building, and that's when it was discovered that the police station was on the Rossi. So then we had to come up with an alternative solution because we thought that being on the Rossi was going to take forever. So then we started looking at the Sunoco. Then, I mean, it's been on and on and on. I am more than happy to build on the parking lot area, which was also on the Rossi, and now is finally off as soon as, but I also don't want that to hold everything up. So if we can get with Mike Edwards and get that done, that would be fantastic. If I don't know what, I mean, I would hate for that to drag everything out. And which is one of the reasons we looked at other locations, and it all snowballed from there. And we heard from the public, which was what we wanted. We wanted to hear from the public and what did they want, even though all of that was extremely misunderstood and misinterpreted on purpose by a lot of people. But I think that we have to do something for the police. We have to do something for the DPW. It's been 5 years. I remember the very first conversation that we had about DPW, and then it morphed into the police station. So what I would like to see, to Teresa's point, is we have to do something about parking if we maintain it in that area. The community center, I know that we're not going, you know, we're decommissioning those tennis courts. Can we do something where we have an annex back there?
The answer is the tennis courts and the blue basketball court are all part of the open space.
Great. So they're still considered open space. Yes. So could we build could the community center be there so that we could, you know,
that would be a separate conversation we'll have to have with Green Acres. We did not actually, the police department and the parking lot is still on the Rossi because we have not perfected the subdivision yet. And in order to do that,
right,
we have to perfect the subdivision, name a new block and lot, and amend our Rossi.
Right. So
borough attorney is working. We'll work on in an appropriate time frame.
Because that's how we ended up looking at other locations, because this was taking forever, and our police deserve better than that, and the people of this town deserve better than that. So, you know, at the health of our police officers, and I've had multiple conversations with every single cop, I think, as well as the chief multiple times. So I would really like us to kickstart this thing again and get the Rossi documentation done. Thank you, Chris, for bringing that up. I thought it was actually done. I didn't realize the subdivision piece wasn't finalized. There's so many things going on. And then, but I do think we have to take into consideration parking, because that is a nightmare over there, especially for people who live there. I know, Meg, you live there, but I've got friends who live there and they do nothing but complain when there's stuff going on at the community center, and I get phone calls and texts. So, and God forbid there's a fire, the fire truck won't get down the road, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to do something.
I was just going to add that when there are no events going on at, the parking is not an issue, and I don't know what's
I'm sure.
But for example, when there were softball games on Saturdays and Sundays, there weren't any issues. It was more the larger events like National Night Out, where there would be parking issues when they were using portions of the parking lot. But beyond that, I mean, and sometimes when there was, we used to have voting there. It used to be a polling location. There would be parking issues then as well. But beyond those two instances, I don't recall significant amounts of parking concerns. And I suppose another, but certainly something to look at, and we should see what's required and if we're able to address it.
I do get text messages a lot from people who live there, as well as I would say that street in that area should be parking on one side.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
I mean, which diminishes the amount of parking. So it's a snowball effect. But anyway, those are deep conversations that we can start, talk at another time. I'm done, Ben.
Thank you. We're getting off subject.
If I may just add one little caveat, where it is located as well, essentially located, it's walkability attraction, right? The community center, the rec stuff, Sue, in the summertime.
Oh, great.
It's also great, so that we wouldn't get that if it was on River Road or something like that. So the kids can walk there, and when there are big events, National Night Out, it's a walking and biking location mostly too. So.
Agreed.
All right, we're good. And now, before I'm going to say, Councilman Rodriguez, the head of facilities.
Thank you. So I happen to disagree with everyone. I'll smile because that's what I do. I think it's nice that the neighbors get along with the cops. I bet you the neighbors, no matter where we put it, will get along with our police officers. My biggest concern is getting the best bang for our buck. And I do believe that moving it to River Road does that for us. It doesn't have to be on a 5-acre plot or a 3-acre plot or anything like that. Not that there are any of those on River. But what I do think is that having the calming effect of our police department on River Road, we will improve the health and safety of our people. I believe all of River Road has sidewalks, so it makes it extremely walkable. And it's something that I feel pretty passionate about, though I feel like I may be on an island here because I don't have a heck of a lot of support from my fellow council people, which is okay. We don't always have to agree. But I do think that if anyone pulled out a map and said, where do you think the police department should go, knowing this town, it would probably be on the River Road corridor. It may be on the Bridge Road corridor for safety and response purposes. I haven't lived in the back streets of Fisk and Cedar and so forth. But I do know, I did live on Foreman for a little while. I do think that those streets are tight while River Road is not. It provides us with a capability to be even closer to the community because there's a lot more pedestrian and vehicular traffic on River Road. I was interested in the lot at foreign cars of Monmouth. I looked it up earlier today. It does not appear that it's on the market anymore. It was on the market previously. I thought that might be a good place to slow down a congestion point at the Acme, where there's a ton of traffic that'll go in and out once Over Easy and Dunkin' and every other food chain that wants to go in there that's allowable under the law. I thought that having the police near to that traffic area would slow the people down and potentially save a life. And so to that end, I thought having it on River was a better option. Yes, I've spoken to the police. I've even spoken to the chief, and I'm really interested in hearing from the chief on this before we take a vote or make a motion or do anything relating to the site, because I think his opinion of anybody up here is probably the most important one. He will be living and operating and running and leading all of our police officers out of whatever location and whatever building we choose. So with that, I'd ask the mayor to allow the chief to speak a little bit.
Actually, Councilman Rodriguez and Chief McGovern, I'd like to jump in here. Chris, you know, because you and I have had this conversation probably going back close to 2 years, that I've always been in favor of putting the police department on River Road for exactly those reasons, that even the vehicles that are not in use are a signal that there's a police department there, and we've got a speeding problem and a pedestrian safety problem on River Road. So you're not on an island. I'm just suffering from fatigue, just as Councilwoman Sorensen is, that we've tried to do this. And Councilwoman Christner Keefe, you wanted to know what the genesis was of relocating the police department. It is just that. And that's why I just said just moments ago, it's not textbook, it seems to work for us. It's definitely not optimal. And getting a car down that street on an ordinary day because of parking on both sides and the classic suburban SUV just doesn't fit down there. It requires one vehicle to tuck in between parked cars. So I just can't see where it's the best place to locate a PD. Not that it happens regularly, but trying to get a vehicle out in a hurry, the added traffic, it's just not the right spot. Yes, it's nice to have it alongside the youth center. I don't see where that's critical either. But again, I spent plenty of time on the planning board. As everyone knows here, I've digested a couple of texts about municipal planning. Anything that you would read in print from anyone who's considered to be an authority like Hack, who's written a book about local planning, will tell you that that's where you put emergency services, is on a main road whenever possible. And if it's not on a main road, it should be on a road that's not peppered with residences. So you're not on an island. Again, I'm only willing to go along with it because of fatigue and the need to take our police out of a building that's not in the best of shape and put them into a decent facility.
I agree with you that something needs to be done. I agree that we're all aligned that we want to get our officers into a new environment that will take it into the next generation. Clearly, this building, when we purchased it or took it over, was not purpose built for what it is. The location just happened to be what the location was. So there wasn't a heck of a lot of thought, I don't believe, that went into that. And if there was, then times have changed, because every one of the folks that we interviewed for the architecture and planning purposes as professionals suggested or recommended that when we build in a location that's more appropriate for the services that we're providing. That probably happened 2.5 years ago. But Mayor, I'd like to renew my request to, hear what the chief has to say because of his position.
Ben, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Mayor.
Would you like to chime in at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree 100% with Councilman Rodriguez and Councilman Banahan. And I also am fatigued with it because, when we first looked at Sunoco, first plan, like the Councilwoman Sorensen said, we started here in the parking lot. We started to renovate, then we started in the parking lot. We went to Sunoco, then went to 623, and then we spoke about Far Cars. I do think that's a great location. I truly do. I think it would fit. I went and looked at it myself when Councilman Rose mentioned it. I do believe it would fit as long as the houses are sold with and behind it, assuming they are. But it's just one more hurdle, and it's been 5 years now. We're just here sitting, waiting. If we had an empty lot, the borough owned empty lot sitting on River Road that was big enough, 100% for it. It's just that we keep going around in circles, and it's been 5 years. I agree with Councilman Ray 100% that would be a great spot for it. When we were at Sunoco, I was very excited about that. When Councilman Banahan and Peters, we all met, we looked at 623. I was very excited about that, and here we are, and it's been 5 years. I do think that River Road probably is the perfect spot, but I do also think that it does work here. I've been here going on my 33rd year. I don't remember a time of really having any real major issues. Generally, the guy should be responding from headquarters. I'm sorry, not responding from headquarters generally. I would say they do sometimes, but generally they shouldn't. It does work for us here. 70 years ago when they designed it, Fairhaven, obviously they should have left the spot there. Matter of fact, the police started on River Road in next to Tavalla there, one of those little spots. That's where it started. I just don't think there's any property there, and I'm afraid that if we start looking at a piece of property on River Road 5 years from now, we'll all be sitting here talking about this again, honestly. So like I'm fatigued with it. Like I'll go anywhere you say. Let's put the shovel in the ground. How's that? But since we don't have a piece of property sitting there ready to go, as police chief, as a resident, I've been to all those meetings. Starting 5 years ago about moving the headquarters, and I can tell you that I did not hear really very little opposition about leaving it here. There was always opposition in moving it. Sunoco, there were some complaints. 623. This was the one place anybody that came in or I spoke to were all in support of building a headquarters or renovating a headquarters, but leaving it right where it was. So with that said, I agree with everyone there. Councilman Royce and Councilman Banahan, that is a better spot. I just don't think that's going to happen. We'll be sitting here for 5 more years. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Really have nothing to add to that. Going back to demonstrated need, it really came down to the recommendation and all the reasons you heard before, and the recommendation of our professionals. If we were going to invest this much money, this much of the taxpayers' dollars, it should be done in an appropriate spot. 5 years on, it doesn't seem that I have a council now, or nor to have one back that could actually look to build a facility, not for how Fairhaven is now, or not how Fairhaven was in the past, but what Fairhaven's going to be like in the near and on in the distant future, because we will be spending somewhere around $5 million to build this facility. I hope we have enough land that we can actually fit a appropriately sized PD in a community center at Fifth Street, and that we shall see. Otherwise, we may well be back here trying to make this decision again. So with that, along with the general lines, we will, with the concurrence of the council, instruct Eli Goldstein Partners to proceed with the design study for a PD and community center on Fifth Street. Everybody in concurrence?
Yes.
Chris is
I got a
shaking.
no from Chris Rodriguez. I got Chris shaking his head no.
Ben, does this need to be another feasibility study, or is this just we can tell him to start going forward?
Well, first he's got to see, how do we site it? Is it 2 stories? Is it 3 stories? How big is it? Because we have to fit a fair amount of. It's about a 5,000 square foot facility. Now, when you go to 2 floors, does that turn into a 6,000 square foot facility? I don't know.
Well, 5,000 is just the police.
Is just the police.
Right.
More or less. That's about what a police station is.
Right.
And then we have to do a community center. We don't know this yet. Step 1, hopefully for our next council meeting, we'll in essence have a sketch of a site plan and a general concept of the size and dimensions of a building. All right. And then if we agree on that, we can debate that. We can look at the pros and cons of that. Great. In the interim, Mr. Rodriguez, Councilman Rodriguez, if you want to bring forward another site that's available with a willing seller, with a price tag that the rest of the council may be willing to,
Is Buttonwood appropriate?
that would not be appropriate.
That's
Look,
Well, here's what I'd like, maybe I can propose this. I think that the DPW is a slam dunk. It's just going to be on that piece of property. We're just trying to figure out where. What I'd like to, did we lose the mayor? Oh no, I see you now. I'd like to do a call with Eli before we start laying that out and get Councilman McHugh up to speed on the topic as well. And then, we've waited 5 years. We can wait another week or two for our next meeting to commission the site study. We could also then get a cost analysis of what I don't believe that's going to be an inexpensive feasibility study and site plan. I think that's going to be more expensive because it includes reconfiguring that entire lot, including the parking, and trying to do it while the community center is there and so forth. So what I'd like to do is not fight Fisk, but I'd rather have one conversation with Eli in conjunction with him starting on the DPW and talk to him about what our best options are at that site before we commission a study.
Very well. All right, so let's do this.
Agreed.
Chris, I know your schedule's jammed, but maybe you can.
I will give Teresa 6 dates and times to choose from, and we'll see if Eli can get jiggy with it.
Do you prefer a Zoom meeting, Councilman, or do you want to try to do a social distance meeting on site that it has people spread out?
Or just
I prefer to do it virtually, frankly. I think
Okay.
you can get a lot more options. Mayor, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. What was your thought?
no, let's just either do it a Zoom or a conference call, just to speak in the participants be Councilor Rodriguez, Councilman McHugh, myself, the chief, Eli, and yourself, Teresa.
Okay. I probably would include Rich if you don't mind, Mayor.
Yes, please. Okay. Good meeting with Elect Rich. All right. Very good. We have a path forward. As arduous it may be. Next up, public comments on agenda items. Motion open.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Any members of the public attendees who would like to speak about public comments on agenda items, please use the raise your hand button.
Mayor, you might-
Not including the budget, because that's a separate public hearing.
Right, and also, we don't have ordinance 2020-03 was pulled, which was the M&M, the Fair Share Housing M&M.
Excuse me. New business, yes. New business, introduction of ordinance 2020-03. If you have an old agenda, has been pulled at the request of the developer. So that is not open for discussion. Do we have any hands raised?
We have one, and we've recognized her. She just needs to unmute herself. Miss Bailey?
Who's wrong?
Okay, the police has been my neighbors for 37 years and on Fisk Street, and I really appreciate them being there. Yeah, River Road would be better, but this has been a very good neighborhood, and I appreciate that they don't put the noise on until they get to River Road. So that's all I have to say. And I appreciate them across the street from me. Thank you.
Huge.
Tracy Cole.
Tracy Cole.
Good evening. Hi.
Good evening.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just wanted to add a couple thoughts. I really truly appreciate the open discussion amongst the council, especially on such important matters. It also seems there's an inclination for quick action on the police department, and I feel such relief knowing that you're invested on not just maybe the perfect situation, but something that's also immediate, because there is such a sensitivity and around the health of the building there and the officers that serve us. So I wanted to commend you and thank you. I really feel relief. That's the best word to describe it. I also wanted to perhaps reinforce the position of some council members and not others, but neighborhood policing, in some of my planning experience, is best done from a PD that's embedded in a community. Regional police departments often are much better on a major artery, but I believe Fairhaven's police department with its community center is more of a neighborhood policing department and is appropriate at Fisk Street. I hope that it can continue to work there. I believe it serves Fairhaven very well in that location. And I can only say thanks, Chief, and everybody who works out of that building. Thank you for your patience, and I hope that it takes shape quickly and in its current location. I'd also just like to say I was equally relieved to hear the council agree that 623 does not seem viable, perhaps for various reasons. But I'm also relieved to know that that's not something that's going to be advanced. And I thank you for the opportunity to be heard.
Do we have anyone else?
I don't see any more hands, Mayor.
Seeing none, may I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I've had numerous phone calls and comments about the minutes of June 8th and the executive session of June 9th. I'm going to ask for those to be tabled and reviewed and brought back for approval in next meeting.
So moved. I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm just laughing that one is June 8th and one is June 9th. That was the longest meeting.
Okay. Now we're going to hearing on municipal budget. I think we've already spoken about this, but
Mayor, we have to do Resolution 2020-113 first to authorize the budget to be read by title.
okay. So let's do have a motion for 2020-113.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmembers Banahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Keefe,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Enthusiastic, yes.
Sorensen.
Yes.
Okay. There we have it. Now we can go to a motion to open the hearing on the 2020 municipal budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we have our hearing. Teresa, how do we go from here?
If anyone from the public would like to speak on the 2020 budget, they can raise their hands.
Okay. Seeing none. Motion to close.
Motion to close? Is that it? Motion to
Public
close.
hearing.
Oh, motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Here we go. Now we're going to go down to the consent agenda. Tell me if I'm going right here, Allison. Number consent agenda items 2020-114 through 2020-120. Motion offer.
Well, 120 isn't going to be needed if if the budget passes.
Oh, should the budget, no. So we're 2020 through 2020-119. Thank you.
Correct.
And I just want to be clear, I had a question from one of the council members. 2020-113, Allison, is the authorized the municipal budget to be read by title, and 2020-114 is approved the self-examination of the budget, correct?
Exactly how the mayor read it, yes.
Okay, just, I'm sure that was correct. I just want to verify that.
All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second. Allison, roll call, please.
Councilmembers Banahan,
Yes.
Christner Keefe,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Sorensen.
Yes.
Very good. All right, department reports of May 2020.
Mayor, I'm going to shake the CFO loose. She was here for the public agenda. If it's okay with you.
Please do so.
Thank you,
Bye,
Colleen.
Colleen.
Thanks, Colleen.
Everyone, have a great night.
Thank you.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Colleen. Department reports, May 2020, tax collector, municipal court.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Here we go. Go to the borough. May I have a motion open?
So moved. Mayor, why are we not doing committee reports tonight?
Because Allison took it out.
Oh, okay.
Didn't get to committee reports because it was not on the agenda. Apologize.
May I?
I apologize.
Committee reports can be done at Good of the Borough.
I'll do mine first if that pleases the court.
You have. Go ahead.
So we've spoken a lot about facilities in terms of buildings earlier, and I'm glad that everybody got a chance to go around, and it showed good judgment and good compromise by all. I'm excited to finally make some steps forward, take some steps forward on rectifying some situations in town that have been deteriorating over the years. But with that, I'll leave that aside. I do think that the decision to move forward with the 3rd Street paving project was a good one in our last meeting. I haven't been updated on the planning for that. I know that there's going to be more engineering that's going to be done ahead of putting any pavement down. But I'm a big supporter of that project. And then lastly, we had our first brush facility meeting co-chaired with Councilwoman Koch. We spent about an hour and change on our regularly scheduled Thursday night calls, which will go on throughout the summer. There was a healthy and respectful dialogue that was going on, and we had many voices from all around the community. We talked about things ranging from traffic safety to location to decommissioning or de-intensification to leaving it as is, and we had generated a number of follow-ups, which we will start tackling on Thursday of this week. We plan to do 1-hour meetings and then try in each meeting to bring back a recommendation at least once a month, if not with every meeting, rather than waiting all the way till the end of whatever we decide. We think that bringing ideas forward for the council to consider will help rather than doing it all in one shot. So I want to say I appreciate all the folks that joined the meeting, gave their time, and I also look forward to hearing Councilwoman Koch's views of how the meeting went and the direction that the brush grinding committee is going. That's all I have for today.
Thank you. Councilman Sorensen, you want to speak?
Yeah, I could go next. I don't know what order you want to go in. I just wanted to give an update on the business revitalization committee. Councilwoman Koch and I, you may have seen us walking around town. We were delivering, and Allison's going to share the signs. We've been delivering these signs that the borough made for all the businesses, whether you're a restaurant or a business or a fitness center. And so it's been exciting seeing the businesses open up. As a matter of fact, this morning, as I was walking up to get my green tea at Bouscardu, I couldn't understand what that music was I was hearing, and it was somebody at Poe. Poe was having a class outside. It was really nice to see. Clementine's been doing, bicycling outside. It's wonderful to see a lot of the businesses such as Tavolo and Sea to Sprout putting tables out and expanding their footprint, just to name a few, including Fairwinds, et cetera. So it's been exciting. We are working on and coming up with a little survey to send out to the businesses. One of the things that was brought up at the Fairhaven Business Association that I reported on last time was potentially closing down River Road. There was a little misunderstanding. People thought it went during the day. This would be a nighttime thing or a late evening, like a 4 to 7, and be a walkabout. And we're trying to determine when would be the best time to do that, and then get permission from the county to, and the buses have been very agreeable to also reroute themselves. So that's it from the revitalization. From communications, I just have 2 very quick bullets. Seminar, we're working on a seminar, kind of like a green summit type of a thing with recreation and environmental. With all the stuff that was going on with recreation, we got a little off track, so we're getting back on that, as well as the FAQs. So communication is going to be working on an FAQ with recreation, and I do send it out there to the universe. If anybody and to Fairhaven, if anybody has a topic that they think would be really good for us to do an FAQ on, we are definitely open to it. So please email me or Betsy Koch, Councilman Koch, or even Teresa with some suggestions. And I also look for some suggestions from council members too. Recreation has been very busy. We had our first rec meeting last Tuesday since the pandemic, because there really wasn't anything to talk about. And now there's a lot to talk about, and it's all coming like a floodgate all at once. So first of all, please, if you have a child that's between 1st grade and 8th grade and you have any interest whatsoever in sending them to the Rec and Crew camp, that the Fairhaven Summer Camp, there is a little booklet that's out on Facebook. It also went out on eBlast. Email me if you didn't get it or if you'd like to look at it. It is a little booklet is what I'll call it. It's really just a summary of what the options will be for the Rec and Crew, and then a little survey, because we would like to know how and what would be the best way to move forward. Sports are beginning to show up. You're gonna and open up. You're gonna start seeing some people using our fields, whether they are organized sports such as baseball or soccer, or even football will be starting coming up pretty soon. But you'll also see third-party companies as well, such as, lacrosse training and tennis camps and things like that. So there's going to be more and more opening as we get further into July. I know I've been getting, one other thing, that we are going to be trying to accommodate those that don't do sports as well. So things such as Snapology, and we're working through just a few, few things that we have to do for that, because those are more indoors. But we would always obviously be using all the guidelines that are necessary. The playgrounds and basketball courts, I have gotten a lot of, there's been a lot of stuff on Facebook regarding that. We are hoping to have those open soon. We're waiting for the state guidelines to come down and state permission, and then we're good to go. Teresa, nothing came down today, did it? I didn't.
I believe the projected date is July 6th.
But that's what
final confirmation.
Yeah, so we've heard July 6th, but we've not gotten necessarily guidelines. So that's it from me. There's just a lot going on in recreation, and it's evolving every day. So look for updates. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, may I ask a council president a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
The tennis courts, is it still required to, and you may have mentioned this, I don't recall because my brain is haywire.
I did not mention it tonight, but yes, we are still requiring reservations. We did modify that.
Okay.
That is something that's new. We modified it so that you couldn't book like 2 weeks in advance, only 4 days in advance, so that the courts are not continuously blocked and then nobody's showing up. Although we have been seeing them used a lot, whether it's for pickleball or for tennis. But yes, there's still reservation process,
Thank you.
which we may stick with.
It's not a bad idea.
I will tell you, the people that play tennis, that we've gotten very good feedback from it. So maybe something to stay with.
Something good coming from COVID, is that what you're saying?
Just one thing. Actually, what's very interesting, I do want to mention that the Fairhaven Business Association stated the one thing that did come out of COVID is that people learned how to do business differently. And a lot of them are going to, when they reopen, they're going to continue to do some of those things differently. So it kind of forced them into doing a different way. So you know, and they were able to survive, most of them, so through that. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to mute myself, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other council person like to be heard before we go to the public?
I have a couple of things I'd like to mention.
Yes,
For the month of June, new business was presented to both the zoning board and the planning board. At the planning board meeting last Tuesday, the business over Easy had applied for an amended site plan. It was approved by the planning board. So as a result, in July, for the July zoning board meeting, Over Easy has withdrawn their application. New business for the zoning board in July will be 2 residences that have filed appeals. And the planning board, which will meet on July 21st, is going to have a review of Fairhaven's housing element and Fairhaven's fair share plan ordinance. So the planning board will be looking at that with respect to how it lines up with the Fairhaven master plan. Chris mentioned brush. We're looking at brush from short-term and long-term perspectives. I think you mentioned that, Chris. But we had a lot of input from members of the committee, and it was I thought it was a very well done meeting. The restaurant committee is meeting tomorrow. We're hoping to set up a date where we can have a public meeting and present the results of the survey, present our ideas on rewording the ordinances as they relate to restaurant use. And lastly, when Susan and I were walking around town today, we happened to stop at the business Distinctive Toys. And I just want to mention this because I think this is really what the good of the borough is all about. Margaret Spicer, who owns the store, was showing us these masks that she sells for children, and she uses the profits from that mask to provide supplies for creative arts programs for children in need. So I think that's a really commendable activity that she's undertaken, and I'd just like to say I appreciate what she's doing. And that is it.
Wonderful. Any other council person wish to be heard?
Sure, I'll give a quick update, Mayor, if I may. With police, fire, OEM, OEM specifically, COVID, perhaps some good news. We are at 4 active cases. The town has been at 29 total, so we are certainly in the downtick with that. With that being said, of course, you know, I'm reminded of this sign that we used to see leaving the wire in Iraq. And in the Marines, we like to keep things simple and somewhat, you know, keep it simple, stupid. And it was a simple sign, and it just said, "Complacency kills." And it was just the last thing we saw before we left the wire, before going out of patrol. And I think that's applicable to this situation. Like the governor says, don't be a knucklehead. Let's continue to be smart, and we can keep our numbers down. So that's the good news. The next thing I'd like to just, not really on the agenda, but from the Environmental Commission, Councilwoman Sorensen, perhaps one of those FAQs we were brainstorming about is recycling do's and don'ts. Speaking with residents and Rich Gardella and the Environmental Commission, I think in our town, we love to recycle. We're green conscious, and perhaps we may like to recycle too much. I think most people know not to put plastic bags in the recycling, no greasy pizza boxes, stuff like that. But when you get down into it, to the 1s and 2s, and then those are okay, but only pourables with 3, 4, 5s, sometimes 5s, 6s, and 7s are not supposed to be recycling. So we have some more homework to do, but I think that might be a good thing to do that would benefit the town, so that we can be more effective and efficient in our recycling. So we're gathering more data on that. So maybe stay tuned for recycling do's and don'ts.
Mike, you hit the nail right on the head. That's the main thing that we're going to do in the Green Summit. So we're going to, and then off of that will be an FAQ. So we've recognized that. And Brian Rice is working with us, and it's been, that's one of the things that from the email that we had sent out. God, it feels like forever ago, way before COVID. So no, thanks. That's definitely on there.
Yep.
Agreed.
One other big thing, speaking with Rich Gardella, is cardboard is obviously recycling. It's one of the few things that is still a commodity. Please remember to take out any styrofoam or plastic wrappings with that cardboard. That's all trash. Keep that separate so that we can be more effective recyclers. Last thing we talked about last meeting about the pond, and we left it up to the discretion of Rich Gardella. He chose a pond treatment, and Teresa, feel free to chime in. I believe the purchase order went out last week, and we should be treating the pond.
They had said this week, we sent it based on Rich's recommendation and reviewing the 2 quotes to Aquatic Analysis. And we have $10,000 budgeted. I cut an initial open purchase order for $5,000 for McCarter Pond. And I asked him while he was here to do a quick assessment of Schwenker's Pond to see if that is also at a time when it could be treated or needed to be treated.
Right, so we're trying to get that treated as quickly as possible. Obviously, the temperature are coming up and the algae is starting to bloom already. So we're trying to get those ponds treated as soon as possible.
And to be clear, it's the same treatment we've done for the last 3 years, correct?
The same vendor and the same treatment, yes.
Aquatic, is it? We were doing a different one.
No.
No, Rich ultimately reviewed the quotes and felt that the Aquatic Analysis was the better way to go.
Okay, all right, because they had all their DEP permits and stuff like that, right?
From the timing perspective and from the cost perspective, and in comparing the 2 different processes, Rich and Nick both thought that was the better way to go.
Okay, all right. So if anyone's wondering about the ponds, it's in motion. That's it, Mayor. Thank you. Oh, hold on. One other thing. Obviously the fair, right? Teresa, did you pass along in the constant contacts that request from Ms. Fusora regarding the fair, the cancellation?
Yes. We've certainly got that word out there. I know they were contemplating doing some sort of an alternate fundraiser. I haven't heard anything back on that, but I assure you that whenever the fire department asks us for something, we do our best to accommodate whatever we need, can help them promote anything.
For sure. Okay, thank you.
All right. The only other thing I can add to your comments about cardboard is make sure it's dry. Wet cardboard is also garbage. So, and that is the profit center. Okay. Any other council person? Seeing none, we have Tracy Cole of the public.
Mayor, I'm going to excuse myself before you go to the public. I did want to point out, and I apologize, I should have picked up at the time, on our workshop agenda, not only did we have the facilities, but we also have capital expenditures. And I had sent around a revised spreadsheet to the governing body. The only item on that spreadsheet that is time sensitive, that some decision has to be made on it, is would be the River Road curbs and sidewalk projects, because as you know, the county is going out to bid on that. If we're going to do any work with bike lanes or anything like that, it has to be in the county bid. And if we're going to go ahead and move forward that project, we have to have it designed, out to bid it, and built before the fall.
So you're talking about the bike lane design?
I'm talking about both the bike lanes and the curbs and sidewalks. The bike lanes need to be in the county's bid, which is going out at the end of June, early July, and the rest of the borough's project, if you're going to move forward with curbs and sidewalks or any part thereof, we'd have to have it designed, out to bid, and built before early October.
Yeah. So we need authorization to proceed with the curbs and sidewalks for the River Road paving, and doing that is integral to the paving, because you certainly don't want to be paving up to dirt, broken curb. So anybody in the council like to be heard about that?
At this point of information, what are we doing? I mean, I see it on the workshop. Teresa, is the question that are we voting to authorize?
Well,
What do we do?
ultimately, you'd really be telling Rich Gardella to move forward with the design phase, which he would bring back to the governing body before getting authorization to go out to bid. But he hasn't finalized the design of that project yet. And he's also working with a separate subcommittee that the mayor had appointed on the feasibility or any feasibility of some sort of bike lanes as part of this project. And I haven't seen that committee's final report. I know Rich and the mayor are working back and forth with them, but I do know from a meeting I attended with the county about a month ago on Zoom that if the borough intends to move forward with bike lanes, they have to be in the bid specs for the county's projects, when they actually put them out there.
Okay, and so what's the deadline for us to provide an indication to the county?
Honestly, I think the county, they said they were looking to get that out to bid at the end of June, early July. They didn't give me an exact date, but it's June 23rd, so they're certainly getting to that point.
We don't meet until July 13th next.
I just so people are clear, I support bike lanes as long as they're feasible and not impractical on river, given the parking situation. And I'd be interested to see a design from Rich to help me understand whether that's possible or not and practical for our community.
I would like to voice my agreement with Councilman Rodriguez. I'm concerned about the impact on parking in our business district and how that's all going to work. So what I was going to ask Teresa is, will we have an opportunity to weigh in on bike lanes once the committee has made their recommendation, or will it be a done deal?
No, I Teresa, let me
Go
answer.
ahead, man, you can take it.
I've looked at the only place we're really looking at bike lanes right now is west of Hants. There's some other changes, so it's not in the business district. Although there are some in that area that we need to discuss. But I think it certainly puts the bike lanes from Hants west, and then some debatable area there, and then Grange. But yes, the idea is to allow Rich to go ahead with the bid package for the curbs and sidewalks, and then have a presentation at our next council meeting of what the what the bicycle and pedestrian facilities would look like on the repaving of River Road. We're very fortunate that we have two very talented people, that agreed to be on this committee. John McCormick, who has done tremendous work both in New York City and helped develop the Chicago Bike Ped Plan, and Gail O'Reilly, who's instrumental in getting the widening of Cooper Bridge, and was a great of assistance to me, a tremendous assistance to me when we advocated for the bike lanes on Ridge Road. So some very high level expertise and talents went into this small committee. I want to thank them for their efforts. So Teresa, for our next meeting in July, we should have that up for a presentation to the council. We do need to move along rapidly. I think everybody can see that River Road is in an advanced state of deterioration. We are on the schedule with the county to be paid this year. I really don't want to have it put off until 2021, because I think the potholes and the deterioration are at the point where the will accelerate, and that's what we're going to have moving forward. So bike lane presentation next time, and I think we need to authorize Rich to go ahead and produce the bid package, the design and bid package for the curbs and sidewalks. We can move ahead with that now.
I can have Rich hopefully be prepared to give you both the bike lane presentation and the general, at least, presentation of the curb and sidewalk plans to the governing body at the next meeting. And then you can authorize him to go out to bid from there, if you so desire.
Wonderful. Okay. Any of the council persons wish to be heard? Seeing none, let's go to, we have 16 attendees left. One hand is up. Tracy Cole.
I don't,
Gone.
Tracy's hands down again. I don't know.
Yeah, she dropped.
Okay.
Oh, now they're coming up. Okay.
Oh, now we got 3.
I got Liz McNeil. She can unmute herself and she can talk.
Hi, Liz McNeil, 193rd Street. I'm just wondering, I know, Chris, you delivered a report on the brush committee. I'm wondering if you or someone on the council could articulate for us what the scope and of work is for the committee and also the timeline and the deliverables expected.
We had our first meeting last Thursday. We plan to break the work up into 2 perspectives, near-term recommendations and long-term recommendations. And we're only working on near-term recommendations currently. We focused on what to do about the various issues that were raised by the committee members, which includes traffic safety, intensity of use, cost, alternatives to the current situation. And then we didn't get into long-term solutions. We think that handling near-term things first is a good approach. We plan to meet on a weekly basis, and our timeline is to try to deliver on a weekly basis recommendations to the council.
But so you don't have a set of things that you're working on specifically. You just listed a lot of things that I don't know. Some of those things I actually see as long-term, like, are there other solutions? That's kind of a long-term solution. That's kind of a long-term question, right? Are there other opportunities to handle brush other than what we do now? That's kind of a big picture. I do strategic planning, so I always would call that Horizon 2, right? You know it's there, but you can't actually see it. Where like Horizon 1, you can see it. I'm just wondering if you could kind of maybe talk through what you see happening in the next, let's just say 6 months.
Well, I don't expect we'll go 6 months with this committee. I don't think we'll have enough to do for 6 months if we're meeting on a weekly basis. I do think that, we'll tackle the do nothing or shut it down or de-intensify in the very near term as a near-term approach. And we'll also look into more long-term solutions to recommend to the council for the council's consideration and decision making. So the committee really doesn't have any authority, though we will, for example, we took to the streets, one of the folks on the committee, Mike Cannon, I learned that he created a feedback sheet. He was supposed to go out and get some ideas and synthesize them. He created a feedback sheet for folks that live around the brush facility to understand best what's impacting the folks that are in that immediate community. I have a feeling we will likely do something more wider, town-wide maybe, about the ideas of brush pickup and the impact to the rest of the town, but that's more of in the long-term bucket. So those are some of the things that I think we'll end up doing in that committee.
So timeline wise, you just said timeline, you think 6 months would be too long. So when do you think the timeline will be? What do you think the timeline will be? When will be the end of the work of the brush committee and the decision making begin?
It's hard to tell. We only had one meeting so far and the folks are getting their feet wet. Like, I live and breathe this stuff. A lot of people on the committee represent different parts of the town and don't have quite the lens or depth on the particular issue. So they're coming up to speed. It'd be a bit unfair for me to kind of time box it. I know that the restaurant committee's been working for quite a while, but there's a lot of ordinances and there's a lot of impacts. The brush grind it's a bit more isolated and focused, but I don't really plan on time boxing it, but I can't imagine we'll do 6 months of every single week, a couple hours a week. It just doesn't, just because I've been doing this, it doesn't seem like there's that much to do. But, you know, like I said, every week or every 2 weeks, I should say, I'll report out at the council meeting the results of the previous meeting. We have tasks that we farm out to the folks on the committee, and we will have our second meeting in 2 days. So over the last 7 days, we'll have had our first 2 meetings, and we'll have a better sense for resolutions and timeframes and mitigations. And like I said, it's up to the council, not the committee, to make decisions and implement them.
Right. So when do you see yourself bringing back recommendations? You said every week you're going to bring back a recommendation.
That's the plan, is to try to get something accomplished every single week, and hopefully bring back a recommendation. You know, we may go 2 weeks. The council only meets 2 weeks, so we can't bring a recommendation back every single week. But we want to accomplish something. What we won't do is, what I'll leave it with, is we won't wait 6 months or a year to make it one giant recommendation. Rather, we will be bringing information forward and things to decide on over the very near term and on a consistent basis.
Okay.
All right, Liz, is that it?
That's it. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Liz.
Let's go to, we've heard from Tracy. Tracy, if you don't mind, we'll go to Jen and then come back to you at the end.
Yep, we'll go to Jen, and she can unmute herself.
Thanks, Teresa. Thank you, Mayor. This is Jen Spitz, 26 William Street. I had a quick question on a consent agenda item, 2020-117, the 3rd Street Phase 2. Is this just the approval to go out for the grant, or does this also include the writing of the bid spec to go out to potential companies to do the work?
No, this is just the go out for the grant, Jen. We wouldn't even design the project until we see if we get the grant.
Got it. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, or at least request, that when that part comes around, that we detail that they should account for carrying away the asphalt and cement and any other debris. In phase 1, a lot of that was dumped in the brush site, and it sat there for at least 6 months, and I kind of stopped checking on it at that point. And so I would hope that we could avoid doing that again.
That was staged at that site. It did not sit there for 6 months.
It did, Teresa. It was put there in October, and I have photos from the following spring that I took through a broken slot in the fence that it was still there, and that's when we raised it to you guys. So I don't want to debate it. All I wanted to do.
I'm not debating with you, but I'm telling you, we also use that site to compact materials that he was doing some improvements there, and they dumped stone and stuff there to keep the trucks from sinking. So to the best of my knowledge, the contractor removed that in a timely manner, but your point's noted, but we always have to stage concrete and in a project someplace, because they have to get it up and move it immediately, and then they come back and take it away. And we're not alone. You'll see New Jersey Natural Gas, every utility does some sort of staging area when they're doing a project, whether it's for equipment or supplies, or they just can't run a large project without having some sort of staging area.
Well, we were told last time that they were supposed to haul it out, and at the last minute decided to put it in there. That's what I was told at a council meeting, because they didn't know or didn't think about it, or weren't able to stage it on 3rd as though they thought. So I think we just need to be abundantly clear with people what the project is and what options they have for staging it. And quite frankly, I would prefer it not get put over here, because there's the potential for it to end up in a chipper and end up in the air. It creates more traffic, it creates more health concerns. And I'm just respectfully requesting that we come up with a better way to handle this before the project gets started. That's all. I'm putting it out there now before we get started. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's Tracy Cole. Tracy, you want to mute yourself?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Regarding the, sounds like the upcoming sidewalk and curb work along a section of River, I gather, the western section of River Road, is that correct?
Yes.
I wonder and maybe this is already in the plans, but Has the borough considered, or is it part of the work, to pull wires for all sorts of things? Something you might think of in the future, whether it's holiday decorations or powering equipment that might be used for an event or some sort of community gathering of some sort. Would that work include pulling power?
There are some plans to put some sprinkling of street lighting in there that they would pull wire for. Not nearly the intensity that would be in the downtown area because it's a residential area. But I believe, and the mayor did a walkthrough with Rich Gardella, but I believe the general idea is to put some street lighting in the western portion of River Road.
Okay, so it doesn't extend into the business district?
There's already street lighting in the business district.
And curbs.
I was suggesting or wondering if there, and maybe I should back up and say, because I don't know the scope of the curb and sidewalk work that's proposed. Does it take in any portion of River Road where the business district starts?
It's actually, I believe, right about the PNC Bank there to the Red Bank border.
Oh, okay. So like from Smith down to
the Red Bank border.
Then it wouldn't be relevant, right?
Yeah, but the new road would be the whole.
If the paving's the whole area.
Paving would be the whole.
Right. Oh, all of River?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's being done by the county, not the borough.
Yeah. Well, if we ever do get a chance, it might be nice to pull wires for the lights and.
Well, there's JCP&L does offer lighting off of their poles but the borough's street lighting on River Road is on our street lamps. It's not as high up as utility poles. We have inconsistent utility poles on River Road, and a lot of them are not opposite each other, Tracy. We looked for high and low to try to put a banner across River Road to replace the one that used to be just a little bit west of Borough Hall here. And I had JCP and out here and L out here, and there's only certain places where they'll allow something like that. But we did not have two adjacent poles across the street from each other that we could do something like that.
Yeah, I understand. But perhaps one day, like decorations on the power, on the poles, just the street lights. Anyway, I don't want to get too far into it. It doesn't sound like it's going to be an opportunity is coming up anytime soon. I just want to clarify, did the M&M ordinance did not get introduced tonight, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, is that on the next agenda?
It most likely will be. It was taken off the agenda by at the suggestion of our special counsel. He was in some last minute discussions with the developer and with our planner, and hopefully they'll get that moving forward at our next meeting. The good news is that the delay is not the borough's, so we're not in jeopardy of violating the court order. The court master and the Fair Share Housing Committee the council were advised, and they don't have an objection because the hardcore press to move that forward came from the developer as part of that court order. So as long as it's a developer asking for a delay, it's not going to reflect badly on the borough.
I understand. Okay, and you'll be taking public comment on that ordinance, which I know a lot of hard work has gone into this, but you'll be taking public comment at the next meeting?
Well, we don't take public comment at the introduction. We have a public hearing and adoption at the second reading of the ordinance, and in between, since it's a land use ordinance, it will go to the planning board for their input on whether it's consistent with the master plan.
Right, got it. My last comment I wanted to say, just as one resident, I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way. It must have been tough to make the decision about the Fireman's Fair, but it's the right decision. And personally, our family and extended family who always come in to attend will miss it. But we'll look forward to future years. And I like the photography idea they have. And I just wanted to say, anything we could do to reminisce and share and stay connected with our happy memories is just a really great thing. And we'll be participating. I'm looking forward to future Fireman's Fairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Any other good of the borough? Seeing none, motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Thank you for your comments. We will now be going into executive session. Action will not be taken.
May I ask the council members to please mute their phone and disable their video? Mine has 5%.
I'm back.
All right, we got to close this fast because I've got 3% now.
I'm back.